Hi guys. For the last 3 weeks, we've been learning about democracy, and we specifically focused on the United States and how we're a form of a democratic republic. Today, I'm going to be illustrating for you how our democracy works and how we have these 3 branches of government: the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. And I'm going to be showing you how these 3 branches have things called checks and balances that help make sure that no government branch has more power or less power than the other branches of government. Looking back 200 years ago, our founding fathers were putting together ideas for how the people should govern or lead themselves, and lots of arguing. And I mean a lot. The founding fathers would create the Constitution. Essentially, this piece of paper created the entire government, and it laid out the rules for how the government would run and how the government would keep its citizens safe and protect its citizens' rights. But this would exclude, of course, the rights of citizens that did not own land, people of color, and women. It would take later amendments or changes to the Constitution to protect these groups. Now let's get back to the Constitution. The very first branch the Constitution set up was Congress, or the legislative branch. It created both the House and the Senate, who had to work together to create bills that would eventually become laws. This is where we get the Schoolhouse Rock video, "I'm Just a Bill," because it's Congress who decides what bills will become laws and which bills will die. Then the Constitution set up the executive branch. You may be familiar with this branch the most, as it's the one that gets the most attention. The executive branch is led by the president. Each time a new president is elected, they make the promise to protect and defend the Constitution. This means the executive branch is in charge of making sure people's rights are protected and laws are enforced. Finally, the third branch of government is the judicial branch. The judicial branch is in charge of interpreting the laws that Congress makes, including the Constitution. When a person or group claim they've been harmed by others or the government, the Supreme Court will judge whether or not the person was really harmed or had their rights taken away based on the Constitution. So when we look at our 3 branches of government, we can really think of this giant tree of power. And each of the 3 branches are going to get their power from one source, and that's going to be the Constitution. So we have our Constitution right here. And that's going to be where we see the "We the People" document begin. So from the Constitution, then we get our 3 branches that were created. Our first branch is going to be the legislative branch. Legislative. Our next one is going to be the executive. And I'll write that right up here, that way it's easier to read. Executive. And our next one is going to be the judicial branch. Judicial. And each of those are going to have their own checks and balances, which I'll get to now. So let's start with the branch that we're more familiar with. And so, as our first check of power, we're going to look at the executive branch, and that's going to be our idea of the president. And so the president may decide, okay, if the legislative branch creates a piece of legislation or a law that they don't like, he has the power to veto. And that means that he can kind of kill that law so it's no longer existing. And the other balance of power that the president has, the other check of power, is his ability to nominate judges. So in the judicial branch, you have your 9 Supreme Court members. However, let's just say, unfortunately, one of them ends up dying. And so it's going to be the president's job to then nominate a new judge. So he has the power then to put somebody in control there. So let's take a look at our judicial branch, or where our Supreme Court is. It's going to be within their job to limit and check the power of the president and the legislative branch. And so the judicial branch, they're going to check the power of the president by deeming something he does or she does unconstitutional. So let's just say the president creates an order where he says absolutely nobody is allowed to talk in public. the Supreme Court's going to look at that and they're going to say, absolutely not. It is within our constitutional right to have freedom of speech. The president can't make a law or order like that. And so they declare it unconstitutional, checking his power. But then, let's just say now the legislative branch wants to create a bill, and eventually they decided we're going to make this a law where people can't talk in public and they can't even talk in their own homes. And let's just say they all approve it. Again, the judicial branch is going to say, absolutely not. That's against people's constitutional right to freedom of speech. So they're going to check the power there. They're going to say this law is unconstitutional. Okay. The final branch that we're going to take a look at is our legislative branch. The legislative branch is going to look at both the deeds of the president and the judicial branch. And so let's just say the president does something really terrible. Let's just say he steals a bunch of money from hospitals. The legislative branch, composed of both the House and the Senate, are going to look at that and they're going to say, that's awful, that's terrible. And then they're going to start something called impeachment. And that would take the president out of office after enough senators and enough people of Congress decide that nope, this person should not be in office any longer, checking the president's power. But then the legislative branch is also going to check the power of judicial judges. And so let's just say another judge, they are deciding that they're also going to steal a bunch of money from a bunch of hospitals. And so they're going to look at that too, and they're going to say, absolutely not. That shows that this person is not fit for their position as a Supreme Court member, and they're going to start an impeachment trial as well to kick that person out of the Supreme Court, checking the Supreme Court's power as well. Today's secret word is liberty. Here's just another view of checks and balances for the U.S. government. I think this one makes it very clear, so feel free to pause the video and check it out to see exactly what those checks and balances are. Today, you learned that there are 3 branches of government and how each of them receive their power from the Constitution. The legislative branch creates bills that become laws and help protect our citizens. The judicial branch is responsible for looking at these laws to decide if they agree with the Constitution or not. The executive branch is in charge of executing these laws or making sure that citizens follow these laws. Each of the 3 branches of government make sure that the other 2 branches are doing their jobs, not abusing their power, and keep power equal between all 3 branches. Thank you guys for watching this video, and let me know which branch of government you would want to work for and why.